Hi everybody, this is Dan Stoltmarger. Welcome to this week's KFIR Middle East Update, the week of March 26th. And I don't have any kind of final results for the Israeli elections. There's going to be some articles in the update for you to kind of peruse, but there's nothing official yet. In fact, the bottom line is that the Central Elections Committee has until March 31st to present the official vote results to President Reuven Rivlin. And then he's got until April 7th to issue his recommendation in terms of what party can begin to the process of trying to put together a coalition. So anything at this point in time regarding the elections can radically change over the next week and a half. But we will report on some things that we're gleaning from what's taken place this particular week. Now, this is our update. We usually talk about news bites in the very beginning, just sort of short, pithy, did you know sort of things. Make sure, by the way, that you get the PDF PowerPoint because it really accompanies this video and has much more detail in terms of the articles that we're covering, photos, maps, etc. So make sure you get those. And I'm pretty sure you can just click the link on YouTube, that there should be a link that you can get that, or you can always go to our website at holygroundexplorations.com. So this is the big news for me. I realize the elections and all of that, but this article is entitled 9 Miles Wide. And there's a map here for you to see. It's slide number 4. And I want you to locate Netanya on that map, because if you can see Netanya, you can realize why this is called 9 miles wide. Because from the West Bank in Samaria to Netanya, that's the distance. And by the way, the Biden administration is reportedly intending to demand that Israel return to the 9 miles wide pre-1967 armistice lines. It should not be a surprise to us, but can you consider how dangerous that might be? The plan is very simply to allow the Palestinian state, remember this is now a 2-state solution, to extend all the way to that armistice line. I don't think it takes any sort of nuclear scientist to figure out the proximity of Netanya and 9 miles. Do you realize what's taken place over the last, 15 years in terms of Gaza and Sderot? How many rockets have been fired into that area? And now this is about the exact same distance, even a bit shorter, 9 miles. And you're going to allow the Palestinians this strategic point in the concept of a peace partner? Give me a break. 9 miles wide. You can understand why, as this quartet is getting back together, why there's no expectations of anything coming to pass from the Israeli side of things. This is just going to be another one of those situations that's going to just cause massive frustration. And you wonder if the Biden administration will follow the Obama administration and begin stepping back from our commitments to Israel. Well, as I've mentioned, the famed quartet getting the band back together for the first time since September 2018, the Middle East Quartet, comprised of representatives from the United States, Russia, European Union, and the United Nations, are convening to discuss, quote, meaningful negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. Right. And what's interesting this time around, however, is that, despite the Biden administration previously saying that we're going to scrap everything that Trump's done, think about the Abrahamic Accords and what's transpired, but they want to set that aside and go back to the old ways that had, 7, 8 years of fruitless negotiations. Nothing. But the new insert here. In related news, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has said, and he said this on Wednesday, that we, China, will invite Palestinian and Israeli public figures to China to begin the negotiations. Interesting. Well, let's talk elections. Bibi Netanyahu. This is a mess, to be honest with you. A mandate to remake Israel democracy. If Netanyahu wins, why this time around will it be different? The reality is that the only coalition that can possibly build or get to that 61 seat is going to be right-winged. It's going to be, if it happens, it'll be the most hawkish in the country's history. And we're going to have to wait and see. We're going to have to wait and see if the kingmaker, and we'll get to that in a second, Naftali Bennett, if he would actually be tempted to go to the left, or if he's going to go all in and give this narrow margin of victory to Netanyahu. Again, the reality is that it's not, when in this next article, it's sort of 61 seats, anybody's guess. The reality is that when Israelis go to the polls, they don't vote for a person, they vote for a party. And in order to have a coalition government, you have to have over half the seats in the Knesset. The Knesset is 120 seats, thus you need 61 seats. Right now, Likud is winning, that's Netanyahu's party, but they're only in somewhere between that 30 to 33 number in terms of seats. That means they have to horse trade, I guess you would say. They have to come up with a coalition government and invite other parties in. That's why those that may only have 10 seats can be very influential, because the major party needs those seats in order to form a coalition. So there's an article there that just simply says 61 seats, anyone's guess. But here's the bottom line, and this, I just got this morning, so let me give this to you with keeping in mind the fact that nothing is settled yet, but this is where we stand now in terms of the bottom line. There are 3 possible scenarios in terms of making up this next coalition government. It could be a government headed by Netanyahu. It can be a government headed by someone else, but most likely on the right-hand side, or new elections, number 5, over the past 4 years. Can you think about that for a moment? Actually, over the last 2 years. So the most likely scenario of the 3 is that Netanyahu will eventually be able to stitch together a coalition. It's not going to be an easy task, but it simply is the most plausible, because the other 2 scenarios are far more complicated. The objective numbers show that Netanyahu has won the election with a double-digit lead over any of his rivals. So in a sense, the people have clearly spoken. But there is such a massive, if you can believe this, if you're in the US, there's such a massive media climate that has a hatred towards Netanyahu, whether it's whatever you want to call it, fake news or whatever. It just seems like there's just political chaos that's on the horizon. If the media would only see the good of the public rather than its own pathological hatred for Netanyahu, this could move forward. But I wouldn't hold my breath, which is why, once again, I've said, hold on. It's not going to come until sometime past April 7th that we're going to know whether or not there is a new government, whether it's Netanyahu once again, or whether they'll be calling for number 5. Well, what else is going on? Well, let's talk about the coronavirus. Israel, this is from the sort of the head of the coronavirus this is, what's the word I'm looking for? He's the czar of the coronavirus in Israel, and since everything's going through him. But this is Professor Nahum Ash, and he's basically saying that Israel's not going to experience another wave of the coronavirus. The numbers are dramatically dropping, and now most of the restrictions limiting the ability of Israelis to travel have been canceled. We've been reporting schools are opening, gyms are opening, restaurants are opening, and we are anticipating that Israel as a nation, as a country, will open up to tourists once again sometime during the summer, which means for us at Holy Ground, and by the time you get to the end of this, you'll see our dates for our upcoming tours. We are looking forward to going to Israel in the fall. We have 3 different trips. The one that we're promoting that's open to all happens to be what we call Revealing Israel. And those dates are October 13th through the 22nd. On that last slide, you're actually going to see a link, a YouTube link for a promotional video for that. So check that out. And last but not least, we probably need to put this up. There's been large scales, despite all of the elections and the coronavirus and all the noise, there's been large scale hostilities breaking out between Israel and Hezbollah in the northern area of Israel. You'll see the blue line in the slides there. The IDF has recorded and reported 269 incidents of crossing the blue line into Israel, 274 cases of presence of armed individuals who are part of Hezbollah, different incidents of just rock throwing across the blue line into Israel. So there's tensions that are continuing to not simmer, but begin to bubble over. And so we want to keep our eyes on that northern border. As you know, there's literally tens, if not upwards, we're told, to 100,000 rockets that are held by the Hezbollah pointed towards Israel. So that's the world we live in. The good news is this, is that we know who holds Israel in the palm of his hand. And again, God's promise is that he'll bless those that bless thee and curse those that curse thee. That promise still holds today. And under all of that, holding all that up, is simply this: God is in control. Amen. God bless you. That's our report this week, and shalom.